Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Terry Wager, and this is my good friend, not Dr. Kevin. And we are here talking about something today. What are we talking about today?
Being micromanaged.
Yeah. And I actually called this, what the hell? My coworker is micromanaging me because I actually had someone close to me ask me the question, what do I do when I have a friend who has coworkers micromanaging them, not the bosses? And I thought that's a good topic because, I mean, what else are we going to talk about? So, now I'm going to take a minute and let everybody know I was trying to micromanage Kevin, my friend here, by getting him to be somewhere where he's not on a phone in his car for this live stream, but he couldn't do it. So I just said, screw it. I'm not micromanaging. We're going to see what happens.
Don't mind any lags.
And he just lagged as I said it. That's hilarious. So, Kev, tell me your experience with, I mean, I know you have, like me, been an entrepreneur for a long time and many businesses that you own yourself. But in your experience, have you had people try to micromanage you?
Yeah, for sure. Whether, like Terry said, I mean, I've kind of worked somewhat on my own, but I guess it kind of stems from people trying to micromanage when I've gotten to the workforce. I'm a big fan of it. Am I lagging? Fuck.
You're good. You're good. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. We can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of micromanaging. I don't like being micromanaged. I don't like micromanaging other people. In my opinion, if that has to be done, somebody's either in the wrong role or the role is not clearly defined. One or both of those is wrong.
And oftentimes, I think that's going. And one of the big things I think about micromanaging is when we look at micromanaging from where I'm coming from, when I'm evaluating how people are working or doing work in their office, and precision is one of the businesses that I really appreciate because all of you guys kind of do your own thing, and when you need help, you ask for it. You guys communicate really well, and nobody in precision really has huge anxiety. And I say that because when I go into businesses or I'm working with people who are either micromanagers or micromanaged by other people, what I see in the business is a lot of anxiety. And what micromanaging is really doing is externalizing my fear of something not being completed either right or on time or something like that. And so I start to look externally to try to figure out how to make somebody else do what they're supposed to do so I feel better. And that's the whole idea of micromanaging. And so what's happening is a lot of people are attempting in some way to manage their anxiety around a situation, and they do it to the people around them. And so I know for me, I used to work in restaurants way before I got into psychology and way before I did a lot of my own personal development stuff. And the kitchens that I worked in were very high-end restaurant type stuff. And, when people ordered food, it had to be on time. It had to be delivered right. It had to look 100%. And we weren't just passing out slop. And so there was a lot of people that were micromanaging at that time, especially if somebody wasn't running their station right. And I mean, we had 9 people on a station that could fit probably about 5 comfortably. And so we had way too many people in the kitchen, but we needed that many people to do the level of work we were doing. And so it was very, very tight quarters, a lot of people, a lot of positions. And man, when it was the right people, we worked like a machine and everybody knew what was happening. Everybody communicated really well. And when there was one thing off, it could really pull the whole thing off. And so then we'd end up all the time, we had this one sous chef that would come in and micromanage everybody, and they just slow everything down, start getting in the way, start trying to do your job for you, and all of that. And it was terrible. And we ended up getting him fired because he was just always getting in the way. But it was his anxiety over not being good enough or not getting the things done the way he could. And he was worried about his performance rather than what the goal was. And it was that guy was a disaster in the kitchen. And so one of the things, he never really did it to me, because one of the things that I did was I was like, hey, I appreciate where you're at and I appreciate you want things right, but I got to be able to have this space. I got to be able to do what I'm doing. And I need you to trust me that I'm going to be taking care of this. And the funny thing is when I identified what was going on with him and letting him know that I'm here for him, and him getting in my way keeps me from helping him, he calmed down around me a little bit, and then he'd go and spin off on other people. But how have you dealt with it in the past?
I think for me, I would, kind of get to the core of why they feel the need to micromanage me and see if there's issues that I can fix. I don't have a ton of experience, to be honest with you, in dealing with it myself. Honestly, like usually I just end up leaving. Which I don't know if that's
an easy way to deal with it.
Yeah,
I know how to make money, so I will just go and do that.
Well, even when I didn't know how, it just, I was never big on feeling like I was being watched, and I didn't have the tools that I kind of have today to help change that situation or manage it better. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I've been kind of doing my own thing more or less since I was for the last 10 plus years.
Birth. Because you're about
Yeah. Close, yeah. So like I said, I'm really just not big on it. I don't like to manage that way, but when I would try to solve it, I would try to understand the other person. But usually the people I feel like that micromanage the most are the ones like very convicted in their own beliefs. They're not very open-minded to different perspectives, which would explain a lot of why there's micromanaging. Again, I'm not a big believer in it. So,
well, yeah. And I think that, rigid in their beliefs, but their beliefs are also centered around fear. And
right.
So we're not going to get it done. We're not going to do it right. This is going to be bad. That's going to be bad. I need to take control here. And one of the things that I talk about is fear drives the need for control, and the need for control destroys relationships. And so what happens is when you start moving into micromanaging, what you're actually doing is starting to destroy the relationship and destroy trust, whatever trust might have been there. And the unfortunate thing is we all tend to live in this world of protecting ourselves rather than being vulnerable. And so when we get into some place, we're walking in with a level of distrust already because we got to protect ourselves. And so then when somebody comes in and starts micromanaging, we start looking for more places that they're doing that type of thing. And we start guarding against them more, which causes them to feel more anxious and start doing it more. And we've caused a really bad pattern of protecting against the micromanager, which makes them think that we're hiding something and they need to be managed better.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle.
Oh, the viciousest of cycles. And it's so interesting how, if we're not really stepping back and going, okay, what's happening with this other person that they're micromanaging me? We can't stop it. We actually make it worse. And I think, honestly, if I was to say to somebody who felt like they were being micromanaged, I'm going to blame the victim, I would, because I'd say if you're being micromanaged, it's your fault because you're not paying attention to the other person's fear and addressing their fear. You're trying to push away the micromanagement instead of understanding that micromanaging is actually reaching out to you saying, I'm having fear of something, and this is the way that I'm trying to deal with my fear. And so many times people have behaviors that they're doing that we don't like, that are actually asking for help behaviors, and we don't even realize it. We categorize it as an assault or an attack on us, and then we attack back or avoid, right? We quit. I'll just leave. I'll go do my own thing. And we've actually removed ourselves from being able to help that person. And then I can bet, and you can probably tell me, am I wrong that people might take what I'm saying wrong? They might go, Terry, you're saying that it's my fault they're micromanaging me.
Yeah, they want to blame the manager.
Yeah.
I would. If I, like back in the day going through it.
Yeah, say that again, because you did break up a little bit.
I was saying that, like, I definitely would assume it's more of the micromanager's problem than the micromanagee.
Nice. Yeah, and I totally agree that the micromanager has a problem. But am I going to add to the problem or add to the solution? And how do I add to the problem? By fighting the micromanager or by surrendering to it. If I do what they ask, it's going to make it worse. And if I fight it, it's going to make it worse. And so what I really have to do is point it out as a blind spot. Now, what would the problem with that be?
Well, what was it?
This lagging is super good. So if I'll repeat what I said is, if I have somebody micromanaging me and I go with it and just surrender to it, there's going to be a problem with that. If I fight against it, there's going to be a problem with that. So what I have to do if I want to end the micromanaging experience is I have to address it. And what would the problem with that be?
It's going to create conflict.
It's going to create conflict. And so what do I have to be within myself in order to be able to create that conflict, or at least, and honestly, it's not creating it as much as bringing it to light. But what would I have to do in order to bring that to light?
You'll have to understand your emotions.
Yeah, and how many people are there? We don't like to understand our emotions. We want to blame. We want to point the finger. And honestly, I think when people start being concerned about being micromanaged, what they're actually not doing is they're not really realizing what's going on with them, that they're having an aversion to the micromanaging rather than realizing that they have a role in being able to confront it, to bring it to light, and to explore what's going on and help that other person out. And so, and I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about our own personal development, is I'm starting to have an aversion to somebody doing something. Well, I'm being triggered in some way. Most likely, if somebody's trying to micromanage me, I'm feeling attacked, I'm feeling pressured, I'm feeling invalidated, and maybe even inferior, and a multitude of these different emotions. And so I react to it and try to control the situation and try to either get away, quit, or I try to push back and tell them off or whatever. But I'm dysregulated. And so I need to really identify what's going on with me. And in the beauty of being able to identify that, hey, I'm feeling inferior, I'm feeling pressure, I'm feeling attacked, I now know how the other person micromanaging is also feeling, because they're actually making me feel that way. So they're probably feeling that way. And then I can be much more exploratory with them and go, what's going on? Are you feeling pressured because you're coming down on me? You don't even have anything to do with what I'm doing, especially if it's like a coworker, right? A coworker is micromanagement. You don't even have anything to do with my results. Why are you, what's going on with you? But there's a couple of things that is going to be wrong with that. One, people are afraid to actually ask somebody how they're doing or what's going on with them, and delve into whatever personal thing is going on with them, because business isn't personal, right? But and they also are so thinking that they just want to get their work done that they're not going to take time out. Well, that's kind of also selfish and self-centered. So what I'm really boiling this down to is, if you feel like you're being micromanaged, well, most likely you're avoidant and you're self-centered. Dang it. And so there's some truth to that, but at the same time, if we're not addressing the micromanaging, we're not looking at how we can actually be useful to the other person who's in crisis and micromanaging as a result. And we're also worried about protecting ourselves and just doing our thing instead of being a help to somebody else. And so if this type of thing is happening to you, you got to look at what's going on with you. Are you being a help in the situation and adding to the situation, or are you just trying to avoid it? And then where else does this show up in your life? I mean, really, it's a conundrum. But I really think that there is really, we got to look at ourselves when we're being micromanaged.
It's like a symptom of a larger problem.
Absolutely. The other thing that I think about a lot is, okay, is this showing up in other areas of your life where people are crossing boundaries? And are they, is it in your private life? Right. And I mean, I think we've all had, moms or dads who micromanage and tell us what we should be doing, or what they think we should, how we should live our lives. And we've all had partners at one time or another who have an opinion. And how do we do with those? Are we feeling micromanaged, or are they actually just making suggestions? Or are we causing the problem? And hey, I know that there's people who are coming in, and I know I've had conversations about my own relationships, and Kevin has had conversations with me about relationships where people are really coming in and start trying to tell you how to live. And
yeah, I rescind my answer from the beginning of this. People have tried to micromanage me.
and what's that like?
It sucks.
Oh, okay. So do you want to elaborate that, or just leave it right there?
Yeah, it's, you feel like you're walking on eggshells. It feels tight. It feels, like you don't have really wiggle room, flexibility to, especially like what I do for work. It requires flexibility for sure. So it makes it that much more difficult if you have a partner that's very rigid and doesn't, allow that. They want you to do things the way they want you.
Yeah. Take the days off that they want you to, the trips, or the be home at a certain time.
Yeah.
And even the way you spend money or whatnot. And there is definitely an adjustment period. And the other thing that's really interesting is, and I've worked with a lot of people in couples relationships and interactions and things like that as a psychologist, as well as teams. And one of the interesting things is, a lot of times we're being micromanaged by ourselves and we think the other person's doing it. But we're not even talking to them. We're just telling ourselves that we think that they want us to do this or this or this, and how dare they think that? And they never said a thing about it. But either our shame of not following through with things we said, or our eagerness to please, we've created a whole list of things we need to do, and that's a whole nother topic. But the reality is, we also don't know when some of that micromanaging is coming from within ourselves, and we just think that they have these expectations of us, and we didn't really talk to them or get clear on what the expectation is, or why they might have it if it's real. And so it boils down to communication. And the number one thing I would say, if we were going to say, okay, so how do we handle it if we feel like we're being micromanaged? The number one thing is acknowledge your feelings. If you're feeling pressured and you're feeling attacked and you're feeling discouraged by somebody outside of us doing this, is acknowledge that, and then really ask yourself, are they doing it or am I assuming it? And then if they are doing it, I want to reframe. Personally, number two is reframe the behavior that they're doing. Instead of attacking me, they're trying to get some kind of need that not aware of met. And then I can get curious and communicate with what I call tactical empathy and go, wow, I'm feeling pressured. I wonder if you're feeling pressured around this, and that's why you're asking me to do this. Or you're feeling pressured with your stuff and you're coming and talking to me about what I'm supposed to be doing. And is that really actually helping you get whatever you need done? How is that actually moving you towards your goal? And when you do that, the fourth thing that comes out, and so the empathic curiosity is really that third thing that we want to do, and ask them about their behavior that we just reframed. And then the fourth thing is reset boundary, or set boundary if you haven't before, and say, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. And what were you thinking I should be doing? And so it's really about making sure we understand whose work or whose decisions or whose path we're focusing on and why they might be in our business and what are they missing in their own stuff when they're looking at ours. And then really the big piece is, and I talk a lot about when we use the prepositions, they're doing this to me, or they're doing this because of me, or they're doing this with or without me. We actually make it emotionally attached to ourselves in some way. And so I really strongly suggest that when this micromanaging stuff is happening, you remove the prepositions, and they're just doing the behavior. It's not to me. It's not because of me or about me or with me or without me. It's they're doing it. Now, is it serving their purpose? And being able to be emotionally detached, we can ask them, hey, is this helping you or hurting you? Do you think this is helping or hurting our relationship? Do you think this is actually making me be able to take care of my work faster by you doing this? And a big question is, are you having some trouble trusting me in what I'm supposed to be doing? And is it something that is actually, and I wouldn't say, what is a concern to you? But I would ask in a much more open and curious way about why they're so concerned about what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. And when we can have those conversations, what we're going to really be teaching them very simply is, and probably not even address the micromanaging as much as address cleaner communication that will start to remove some of the micromanaging, maybe not with everybody for them, but it will remove it for you. And they'll see you as an ally instead of somebody who they need to come down hard on, or they need to fight with, or who they need to avoid. And they'll see you as somebody who's an ally that helps them to actually regulate better. Because micromanaging, if we really look at it and step back from a 30,000 foot view, micromanaging is about really being emotionally dysregulated yourself. And if you're not, and somebody's doing that to you and you're not regulated yourself, now you have two people who are dysregulated instead of being able to help the person come back into regulation. And so it's funny, we talk about this, and in the business sense and in the business world, people always talk about this and they go, micromanaging bosses are bad. Well, no, micromanaging bosses are dysregulated. And then we point the finger saying they're bad and point the finger saying that they're terrible bosses. But really what's going on is they're having an emotional crisis that they're not aware of. And they may be puking everywhere, but you know, even somebody who's puking, they're sick, not bad. And if we look at that, they're having an emotional reaction to a situation. Well, we could be a help, or we could be part of the problem. And what I think the world of work actually does is we buy into this dichotomy of good and bad bosses instead of human, and we don't actually take care of, or I should say care for, our other humans in the thing and ask them what's going on with them. Well, no, that's crossing a boundary. Well, so is pushing them away or quitting. Right? And so it's not crossing boundaries, it's how we cross a boundary. And are we doing it with loving compassion and curious empathy? Or are we doing it with aggression back or avoidance back? And that's really the question. But I think that if everybody would that was listening to this, if anybody listens to this, who knows, really started to think about, okay, when I get into these situations where micromanaging might be a thing, or just boundary crossing, how are we going to cross the boundaries? Are we going to do it with compassion and curiosity and help in the idea? Or are we going to do it with our own idea of how to set boundaries and draw lines in the sand that can be crossed easily? And I think that too many people cross the boundaries. And so that's my take on it. So what would you do, or what take would you give to people when they're in a situation where they find this happening? Kev?
Well, first I would say identify, your own emotions, see where you're coming from, so you have a foundation why you feel the way you feel, and then try to help the other person identify their emotions, like you said, kind of crossing boundaries, but digging deep to see why they're acting the way they are, why they feel the way they feel, and see if you can come to an agreement. But you have to be direct with how you're feeling, which I think people struggle with. I know I do.
Yeah.
A situation like that, especially in the workplace, if it's a superior that's micromanaging you, it's not always easy.
Yeah, it can get scary. Yeah, and I think Kevin really said that well, is identify what's going on with you, and then be curious about what's going on with them emotionally. And we don't like to go there, and a lot of time we just stay at the behavioral level, and you can't do that to me, or you shouldn't do that to me, or I'm going to do this to you, and we live in this doing world instead of feeling world, and we got to get down to the feeling. And I know that when Kevin and I first started working together, Kevin didn't really know what I was talking about too much, like most people don't, because it's foreign. And when he started actually applying some of this in his relationships, personal and business, he started having a whole lot different results, whether it was tenants or coworkers or even the different real estate people that he worked with, and personal relationships. People really respond differently when we go from a curious, empathic way, asking them how we can actually be helping them while being direct about what's not working. And when we can do that, we actually have better relationships, and we start to actually have fulfillment in the relationships and start moving in the direction we want to, because we're clear. So I think that's what we got for today. We will be back here on the 26th, the day after Christmas, because both Kevin and I love talking about this stuff, and we got nothing better to do on the 26th.
We'll be here.
See you guys next time.
Still live?